Maybe these. Hmm. I think these, but maybe, too sophisticated. Nobody will understand. Maybe it's best to simplify. So, hello, welcome. Today is going to be a doozy. We are talking about behavior. And the reason why this is a doozy is because in the first video in this series of ABC, Appearance, Behavior, and Communication, I spoke about appearance. And the thing about appearance is that while it might be simple and innocent and innocuous enough to say, people care about the way they look and their image and their self image, and they care about it for a number of reasons, I understand that these are contentious matters. And I think they're contentious matters because people are very aware. I guess, let me put it like this, and that's to say, I think most people are, they grew or evolved or whatever it is, they've come to be socially and emotionally aware enough to know generally when and maybe not how, but they generally know when they're being judged. And that can be anything from condescended to certain looks, to certain behaviors, aggression, judgments. And that's what we're talking about here is judgments. And people resist judgments. People resent and resist being ranked. And they often resent, anything from social order to who the boss is to you name it, right? So these are just human matters and human issues. And at the heart of it is behavior. And behavior is a doozy as well, is because it inevitably communicates more than appearance, or you could say even communication, or that perhaps action or behavior or the lack thereof, or the deferral of, or the laziness towards, or the attitudes and the words used to indicate those attitudes tell you what they really mean. So we're going to get into this. And today we have behavior, the ways individuals and groups act, including the who, what, where, how, and why of it. Now, when it comes to behavior, the first thing that comes to my mind as the most quintessential and meta behavior and meta communication, that would be eye contact, actually. And that's where all engagements begin. And so right away, we're seeing what maybe the other person sees of us, and they're seeing what we see of them. And then we're kind of beginning this interchange worked off of assumptions and premises, and it's related to the cultural environment one finds oneself in. For instance, in an office, one works, in a school, one teaches. And the thing about eye contact is that it's so ubiquitous and so universal and so important and so crucial for in so much of one's appearance, behavior, communication in terms of relating confidence and competence and intelligence, and maybe you get the joke, right, a nod and a wink, or any number of things that people do, is that the eye contact really is the biggest art and the biggest one of the most important things to consider, or to understand how it affects people and why, and how it affects you. And before we get lost in each other's eyes, I have to say about eye contact itself, it really is the meta art. It really is the meta communication, the meta behavior. It tells, well, we can communicate as human beings a lot to each other with just the eyes. That's why it's long been said the eyes are the windows of the soul. Well, really, it winds up being so important that I'm going to dedicate a whole separate video to it. So, in the meantime, let's just start with saying that all interaction and engagement begins with eye contact, and then we can question, well, what are people seeking in this, right? Like, we're communicating to each other all the time. The first part reads, 1, the ways one conducts oneself, especially in relation to others. and I have parentheses here saying fundamental form of communication and feedback, right? One doesn't act or speak in a vacuum. We exist in context, the zeitgeist, the culture we live in, the time and place and the events and all these other things, right? No one exists in a vacuum. We're inevitably connected. And this is where I think that no matter what you're looking for in this world, part and parcel of what you're looking for is your relationship to it. The ways one conducts oneself, especially in relation to others, right? I mentioned we don't exist in a vacuum. So no matter what you're going for in this world, it's in conjunction with others in some way. In other terms, businessman Jim Rohn used to say, you'll seldom find a rich hermit. From here, when I say image and self-image are important, it's because it relates to one's perception of the world and our connection to it, right? So it has everything to do with one's presence in the world and one's relationship and, again, appearance, behavior, and communication in conjunction in relation to other people. It gets into our social nature. And with behavior, it really is the larger communicator. Just like eye contact, behavior winds up communicating more than anything else. The importance of image is to say, do you know what your image truly communicates? Because with behavior is the real indicator. It's not words. It's a psychological fact that in psychology and psychoanalysis, for instance, that self-reporting is the least reliable form of reporting. It takes trained professionals to see and understand what's going on with people, because people are often a mystery to themselves. They don't understand their behavior either, especially when it seems contradictory to their values and their desires and their kind of stated, or, whether that's a goal from a dream or a dream from a daydream, some desire, when the rubber meets the road, again, it's those questions of outcomes that I mentioned. How does that work out for an individual? And there's a reason why people seek treatment like cognitive behavioral therapy or hypnosis to start or stop certain habits. And it's, these things have long been a huge industry. So kind of back to what I was getting to in the first video and why this stuff is so contentious in the first place is it not just about disputes of taste, tasting, and preference when it comes to appearance and behavior and communication, because everyone likes to argue over, anything from what words you can or can't use to how one should appear or behave, what's appropriate for an individual, a man, a woman. Before long, if you pay heed to everyone and everything, you're cut into a million different directions, right? And then these are questions of self-design and self-direction, or also correction, right, in reference to analysis and psychology, right? Because at the end of the day, psychology is self-science, right? It's concerned with not a general psychology that applies to some vague mass that doesn't even exist. It's personal psychology, because the individual is the carrier of consciousness, right? And it is through their behaviors and communications that the doctor diagnoses, right? It's not necessarily what they say, unless it's something obvious, like his family has been replaced by robots. When people start going in those directions, or even, things like phobias, agoraphobia, claustrophobia, whatever the general fear of people is, people phobia. Sounds like a kind of intelligent almost, right? So at the end of the day, it's not about persuasion. It's actually a question of what is being communicated. I said this in the first video. Like, I'm not persuading you, right? Oh, come on, just do it. Do it again. Let me remind you in 2 days. I'll send you an email. By the 8th email, I'll have you convinced, right? Or maybe you just get so annoyed, or maybe you feel sorry for me, right? I don't, we can question why people make the choices they do in both marketing and sales. Both the salesman and the customer should be evaluated, right? And I think for too long our in marketing and business, just too much emphasis is put on the salesman and not the customer. But I digress. The point about me talking about persuasion is persuasion implies weakness. The one from the weaker bargaining position is the one that has to do the convincing of what? The value? Shouldn't it be apparent? Shouldn't the value be apparent? Shouldn't I already be able to see it? Shouldn't I already be able to instantly recognize, that's what, okay, this is what, back to brand, logo, image, that's what these things are. They're instantaneous communications that carry a reputation and an expectation and a standard that's low, sort by price, right? No one cares about, or up high. But regardless, it's all around the same kind of merit or rank or order or assumption when it comes to people's judgments and you could say kind of triangulated social emotional connections and approximations to say here's something we do or don't value, here's what we want, here's what we don't want, right? It's all a selective process. This gets to what I wouldn't call a reveal, but it's definitely one of the most profound things I can say about both behavior, appearance, and just communication in general. And it's a quote from that American genius, Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he says, "Don't say things. What you are stands over you the while and thunders so that I cannot hear what you say to the contrary." Right? Sounds a little bit like Shakespeare. The lady protests too much, right? It's always suspicious when people have, everyone's got explanations, everyone's got reasons, everyone's got rationalizations, everyone's got justifications, everyone's got excuses, everyone's got alibis, everyone's got, I said reasons, or they don't have a reason and they're just emotional, right? We could go on down the list as to how and why people communicate what they're really thinking and feeling in any given moment. But in reality, he's right that, not just that people are unreliable narrators, like I mentioned in reference to psychotherapy, let's say, or psychology, but more like, the truth comes out in the wash. And it's generally said that, you can fool people for a little bit, but not forever. Or, you can fool people once, but not twice. Maybe if they're dumb thrice, maybe four, five, six. Maybe you can do it over and over. Maybe you can just be a hidden predator too. Are concerned with appearance and image and behavior are matters of survival and discerning and perishing and evaluating and understanding and communicating and developing strength, right? That's what everyone's kind of doing. So what you are thunders loudly because you can say words you don't mean. You can say words you do mean or want to mean. You can use someone else's language. You can rephrase it. You can borrow. You can beg. You can steal. You can do all these different things, but usually something comes out in the wash, and then people begin to see red flags. They do the accounting and realize, oh, something's off, right? So on this, when getting to number two, behaviors communicate more than words, which is the Emerson quotation I just mentioned. But then there's number three, behavior and appearance inevitably communicate health, personality, motives, intention, mood, security, insecurity. Now, in terms of intention and motives, like I said, you never know what someone's long game is. This is House of Cards or political intrigue or what do you call it? Corporate America, or what's that other corporate structure? Game of Thrones. That's what it is. It is Game of Thrones territory, right? So, and same thing with security or insecurity. And that's why the most attractive thing in the world is a secure person, is a happy person, is an attractive and beautiful person, a powerful person. There's a reason why so much of, even I would say, all marketing, but at least American marketing focuses on things like sex, sex appeal, attraction, beauty, youth. There is a certain childlike obsession with it because they could also dignify age and a certain appearance that can come with age when people do carry themselves with dignity in their appearance, behavior, and communication, right? So our whole culture misses out on a lot of this and a lot. But there are actually traditions and means of giving the people value or giving them an opportunity to show and provide their value. And there's the thing about people and value. I said, yes, marketing, sales, all these things, image consulting, art, it's all about laws and dividing lines, right? Behaviors, appearances, communications, people do and don't want. Things that are either okay, enjoyable, preferable, illegal, right? We go on down the list of how deep and complicated this is, right? It's so complicated that if you get too mad, you might get sent to anger management, right? That's the corporation state for you, I guess. But you kind of get the picture I'm painting here. That yes, of course, this stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. Yes, you will be judged for it, but that's not really the point. So with these dividing lines, it really is matters of it is okay to say shun the non-believers. Hey, you like Pepsi, you like Coke. Hey, you like these books, you don't. Hey, I do, you don't, they might, right? It's too much to sort through. No one's concerned, no marketer or consumer is concerned necessarily with what everyone else is doing, except when that's the bandwagon or the selling perspective or the hook, you could say, right? Be a part of some attractive group, which has long been a part of American marketing and sales. But it's also that has to do with our identity and the way we see ourselves. And this is why I say self-image is everything, just like image is everything. Image being the outer world, what's perceived, and then the self-image being that I want to see it that way, that I'm actually seeing what I see on the inside, I can see on the outside, and then other people can see that too. And that's when I think people really begin to understand the how not just how good it feels, you know, and maybe even for modern people, because I know there's a lot about a loneliness epidemic, but in these psychologist Carl Jung once said something to the effect of, loneliness isn't a lack of people; it's actually an inability to communicate what is meaningful and what matters most to oneself. And he also says things again starts to sound like paranoid territory, but again, when these are all matters of what's selected and called for in people's behavior and communication, it makes sense. But he said something to the effect of, if you can't tell the world what you stand for, they will tell you. Back to the domain and language of psychology is that people aren't apparent to themselves. So you can question, why is behavior the biggest communicator? Why can't we just trust words, right? Well, if we trusted words, well, according to American marketing, like everyone would be rich. According to American marketing, everyone would be sexy and beautiful, right? But we just know that this is not reality. People are not born to equal circumstances. They're not born to equal families. They're not born to equal anything. So there are differences and discrepancies. And when it comes to curating for the outcomes and desires you want in life and for you, your family, the people you care about, these are the kind of methods we use to approximate and understand, like, where are we going? Why? How do we get there? What's valuable about this? What matters most? So all these things are of dire importance, right? Because having trust, again, ultimately the behavior and the appearance and the communication all works together to foster trust and consistency, because you'll see that at the end of the day, the person, the individual, the company, they will come around no matter how far they venture out, or even an artist demonstrates this. Like, let's take a David Bowie, Ground Control to Uncle Tom. You know, he will go far out of his familiar, comfortable territory, but he'll always wind up back at the familiar David Bowie, in the sense that he's always himself. And it's no different for any company. It's always bad when you see a company being anything but what their reputation basically already is, because they should already, if they exist and they are money, then they generally have a name, they have a reputation, they have a logo. Oh, worth mentioning, I would have named myself and this company and this channel Sharper Image, but it was brilliantly already taken by, I think, what is it, a computer copier, photo paper company, whatever it is, but brilliant name. In terms of behavior, it does communicate values. It communicates what the person values by how they show up, by how they're dressed, by how they carry themselves, by the words chosen, by the angle at which they come from situations, by the ways in which they think about things, by the way they frame the world, wherever their narrative structure comes from. Because again, back to the idea that we're unreliable narrators. See, this is really big with us is that people often don't know why they say or do what they do. We're often animals, reacting in our environment just like the rest of them. So it's not just sympathy to understand other people and where they're coming from, right? Because this is also how you learn to see. So you can understand people, so you can better communicate. So you do understand what behaviors facilitate whatever the group objectives are, whether that's two people starting a family, or a company and a corporation and an organization trying to change the world, or an individual trying to change the world. But it's generally true that whatever you want, it should start with you, because if you can't represent it and then further clarify and re-clarify and repeat, basically ad infinitum, right? If people don't see that endurance and that longevity and that kind of strength, then they just can't trust the image that's presented, because they see it's unreliable, it's flimsy, it waffles. One day it's this, the next day it's that. Oh, other people don't like it either, and they can see all these things too. So there's a reason why behavior is crucial here. And sometimes it's all just talk. Sometimes people have false dreams and desires, and you can question why, but it's not really our concern here that their own behavior and communications and whatever it may be doesn't match their values. If they can't figure that out, if they can't do that, then that maybe that's just the liability that people easily are. And what I was saying about people and value is that everyone can add value. Whether they do or don't's another matter. Whether they have good teachers is another matter, right? Whether they can afford to even play the game cognitively, emotionally, socially. These are serious issues that are hardly accounted for, and they usually wind up being accounted for in the court systems, right? If men can't express themselves, if men can't work with the other people around them, it becomes a problem for everybody. So behavior is huge, and it's no different with women too. I don't want anyone to think that I'm discriminating one over the other, because civilization's half and half. So that's two genders responsible for their selves, their bodies, their whatever, because at least in America, at least sort of, we kind of got laws and we're kind of equal but not really, and with enough double speak and George Carlin jokes, you can somehow make the cognitive song and dance of it work in your head. But here in this moment, at least, my point isn't to critique or make a big deal from a perspective of relations to others in the world, that other people only see what they desire. They don't see what they don't want, or they get upset when they do, meaning your boss doesn't see everything you do right. He doesn't get excited when you do the bare minimum of showing up on time and doing the work, or whatever the bare minimum might be. Maybe you go above and beyond and no one appreciates that, or maybe you're like a lot of us and you learn to solve problems before they even happen and things like that, and then you become too good at your job and people can't even see what you do. Like, there's many ways people can approach problem solving, but ultimately your behavior communicates these things, like what you're capable of. It's not just a baseline of expected behavior, it's noticing what people do or don't. And then I guess, to best illustrate, I'll bring up marketer Rory Sutherland from famous Ogilvy's Advertising, when he says something to the effect of, you won't get fired for the logical idea that fails, but you will get fired for the creative idea that fails. He illustrates the point of how people can how people, corporations, and the value systems of the market generally value such things, and that's that we expect repetition of logical steps of what was proven to work yesterday, what produced numbers yesterday, whatever it was. We expect it to work ad infinitum. But remember, guys, ladies and gentlemen, we'll kick it back to the fashion channels here for ancient wisdom, that fashion is a response to the environment. And it was Seneca who said, we don't think according to reason, but fashion. Right? So what worked yesterday doesn't always work tomorrow. We have to learn to adapt. We have to learn to change and adjust, and the market's no different. And then falsely inflating or changing values, and even falsely devaluing, even like haggling is an imaginary devaluing or reevaluating, because it's someone saying, I think something should be more or less. I'm not trying to get lost in the weeds here, but it came out in the wash, and that's to point to how behaviors illustrate certain mindsets and perspectives. The idea that I can change a price because I assume something, but I like to say I'm a fan of paying the price, whether that's for image consulting, whether that's school, whether that's a bad decision. because how else does one learn? It's pain, experience, and the fashion, right? Learning to change your fashion with the seasons was a reaction to going, you know what? We don't dress the same every day of the year because you can't. You'll die if you do that, usually to exposure, right? Things like that come to mind. Moving on with this, that yes, people are familiar with what's most comfortable. Back to why you won't be fired for the logical. The logical is the basic, right? Creativity is complexity, and we are dealing with an ever more increasingly complex civilization, society, and market. And I'll be honest, I'll say that I don't think anyone knows where it's really heading. But regardless, we're all left dealing, we're all left coping, we're all left making the most of it. And I'm a big fan and believer in what Jim Rohn says, that the fundamentals never change, and that's that the next few centuries are going to be a lot like the last few centuries. And that's to say, is going to be opportunity mixed with difficulty. People always figure out a way to deal with that. And if they don't, they don't. But in one way or another, we get the outcomes we get, don't we? So it's a question of, what are you curating for? What are you aiming for? Who's the audience? What are the dividing lines? What are we evaluating and reevaluating on? Again, today it's behavior. We're talking about how what you are and what you behave and how you act communicates more than you will ever say, right? Because you can speak with the nicest, prettiest language in the world, but if everyone can see how you really are, or you can hide everything, but if it comes out, people will demand you answer for what they see as crimes or trespasses against them. So these are very serious social matters. And the thing about actions and behaviors and disciplines is that a single behavior can change your life. A single book can change your life. That's part of the purposes of reading, and the behavior is to not just expose yourself to new information, even what scares you or what you're first afraid of, because then as you overcome what you're afraid of, if you could think of man first inventing fire, right? The fire already existed. Unlike the rest of the animals, man got over his fear of fire, and the rest is literally history. So what you behave and curate for, what you look for, is things that change your perspective, things that challenge you, because then other people see that you are challenging yourself, and they see the attitude and the behavior, and they're often inspired thereby, but also that you carry your own weight. And that's exactly what behavior does, is behavior carries, just like with the eye contact, behavior also carries the biggest weight of our communication. Your body language, the tone of voice more than even the words used, right? Haptics, which is touch, facial expressions, and always coming down and up from eye contact. And then you can even see the way clothing is designed is to frame you properly. The way this one's buttoned, it rides up a bit, but if I unbutton it, it sits, I think, a little bit better here. But all of that is to frame the face. And even the tie, you can see, creates a line up to the face. And then you have complementary shapes, right? Like an oval set against triangles and lines that are actually, if you guys are familiar where all this stuff came from, this was history. This was nobility mimicking armor and warriors. And I don't know if there's an instance in history where common clothing, or what came to be even nobility clothing and then later commoner clothing, or actually no, it's more like there was always a native clothing and then further adopted and changed for military, and then military changed and regulated again for nobility, because once upon a time the king actually fought with the troops, right? So he would have been in his own regalia and also differentiated, because he's about the only individual that can be individuated, because everyone else is in uniform. Uniform meaning solid, the same. Even if people don't carry the same things inside, they're wearing the same things on the outside. Uniforms in this regard are a form of solidarity, a form of clear communication. Moving on to our next points here, when we question behavior, we are questioning, does it indicate intelligence, adaptability? I think I said this earlier, but all these kinds of things, like they're telling of attitudes and health, and depending on what you're saying, maybe it's unfortunate psychological states you can't even see. I started with judgment, and I'm getting to another matter on judgment, and that's to say that the reality is losers resent winners. They always have. Losers resent other losers too, but generally winners are too busy to concern themselves with losers, right? So the way people conduct themselves and how they orient themselves to other beings, like imagine you're trying to give to and help the people around you versus stepping on them or cutting their throats or trying to backstab them, right? There's very different reasons why people behave the way they do, but I'm a big fan of leading with your wallet. And that doesn't mean strictly monetary. That means your best dance moves, your best lead, your best joke, your best assets, your resources, your seed and soil, whatever they are, wherever you're starting, whatever you have available to you. That's what you're leading with, right? This is what all intelligent animals learn to do, right? The flower and, of course, the bee. It's almost like you see that these animals evolved for each other and they even evolved to signal to each other, right? And it's no different with us. So that communication of is this person healthy or not, I think is the fundamental dividing line. And then you could further divide reasons as to why and sympathize and make your judgments and discernments because these are questions of association. If you hang around long enough, you will not have the same friends forever. Sure, maybe there's people you grow up with, you come up with. That's different where you're growing together and staying kind of in pace or keeping each other in check, whether that's family and friends or whatever your orientation and place in the world is. Because, different people, some people have kids, some people don't, some people want them, some people don't want them. I'm not here, my judgments aren't concerned with any of that. It's, as an image consultant, it's to help people to get the outcomes they want, regardless of what they are and regardless of their why. I don't, it's beyond, like, I guess I'm saying here, this is where my authenticity meets professionalism in American business. And I say, I don't know why Americans came to concern themselves with each other's private lives so much. At the end of the day, we have systems and laws for that kind of stuff. And even though social media makes these things easy to judge each other, that ultimately it's no one's business other than, do other people accept it or not? And do other people buy the product? Because if they do, you could see that product, that service, that person, they have their audience. They're talking to them, right? The sports, think of two sports teams, for example, right? One sports team, let's just take the Dallas Cowboys. And I'm saying that because I know Texas is a contentious state and the Cowboys are a contentious team. Ooh, or I could take the Patriots, right? Tom Brady, ooh, right? And the point is like, do the Patriots care about their no, the Patriots care about their fans. That's who they're beholden to, their audience, right? It would be insanity. Imagine if the Patriots went out and started playing and working for another team, other teams or fans, or tried to win over the opposite team or trying to convince the other. None of that makes any sense. This is our team. These are our colors. This is how we do business. This is how we get down. This is our apparel. This is how we do it, right? Friday night, Montel Jordan. It's hard not to say this is how we do it and think of that song. So that's when a phrase or a word gets coined permanently and associated with a image permanently. Back to what I was saying earlier about rank and order and systems is that the reality is within human systems, we have rank evaluations and judgments for things we do or don't like or things we do or don't accept. And people resist these things sternly, whether it's fair or not, whether the judgments are fair or not. All this stuff is secondary to what I'm getting at and saying, again, if you're navigating these things, why shoot yourself in the foot? Why make it harder for yourself? Why be so inattentive and sloppy when it costs you so much and you don't even know what the cost is if these things are new to you, or if you're just now beginning to see bigger pictures, or if you're beginning to understand personally how these things might apply, or even if you're just consuming this content because you just appreciate it or you think there's some truth or sense in it, right? This is the direction I'm going in because this is the process by which culture and people approximate things. So from marketer to audience, from art to audience, flower to bee, turns out it matters if you're communicating the right symbols and the right message, and your behavior is a big part of that. And I'm not trying to associate myself with other people's judgments and values or a shame-based culture in the sense that, yes, people judge each other with these things. But I'm trying to point out like a more nuanced way of dealing with things. Like with some people, you can never be humble enough. You can never ingratiate yourself enough, or they'll love you even if you're arrogant because you're otherwise so competent and important to them. And with other people, you can't be pretentious enough simply because they are so pretentious, so proverbially pretentious. They'll just their words and their attitude will just forever be a hot air balloon, placing themselves above you. So with those people, you have to approach from like, hey, the hot air balloon is rising, let me rise with it, right? So there's approaches to dealing with different people, places, and things because there's no reason to let yourself or again also other people. Maybe there's a gatekeeper in your way, and it's not like you're concerned with this person's judgment. Maybe you're trying to surpass them or even take their job, right? The issue then becomes, it's never about competition with them. At the end of the day, the only way you really self-surpass is by going into competition with yourself. And you can ask any fighter, right? The body is biggest immediate communicator. Your words carry weight only if your body carries weight. And again, if you don't understand this premise, ask the prize fighter, right? Anyone can, execute a little bit of footwork, throw a few jabs, but then the difference between a champion and, a failure, that's a whole different story. And back to the idea that we're narrative machines, the ability to kind of put that story into someone else's head without even having to say it is an art and is a talent and is a skill. Just like working with one's own appearance, behavior, and communication are arts and skills. And I think a lot of these people have thought about these things as soft skills for far too long, when in reality, the most important skill in the world is your ability to work with other human beings, whether that's in a normal situation, a dangerous situation, the consequences and outcomes only become more dire and serious depending on where in society or where in the world you put yourself, because these things can have very serious outcomes. And I really don't want to concern myself too long with pettiness and jealousy and hatred. Again, the idea that losers hate winners and that there has to be X amount of losers for every one winner, right? That that there are zero sum games being played, that there are competitions both sublimated and overt and covert, right? I'm not trying to pull a fast one on anyone. I'm not trying to deny that life and people indeed struggle with power and other issues, right? They struggle with all sorts of problems, that we're judged regardless of our intentions or our motivations, and even our associate, like we're judged for our associations even. And even if we can ride that off and not be concerned with other people, what other people say about us or our friends or family or whatever it is, there's still the matter of, well, you still might have to pay for that fallout. There still is going to be consequences. There still might be, things like libel and slander. There's court cases, right? I could go on down the list as to the import and how these things are so baked in as to be invisible. I guess I think on the first video I said on appearance, I said, if we're fish in water, this is all stepping back and saying, hey, did you guys notice the water? How's the temperature? The petty and the jealous, they don't like being held to standard. They don't like admitting that their ideas aren't appreciated or don't work. They don't like rejection. And most people don't, but it's by overcoming these things and then behaving continually to become better than oneself, to rise above oneself. Not in that pretentious hot air balloon way I mentioned, but in the way that people can sense and feel and appreciate, to where that value becomes concretized in the world. And again, this is why, it actually really, it's hard to make money. It's hard to make a living in the world. It always has been. And back to Jim Rohn, right? It is opportunity and difficulty. And this is what we're trying to enterprise with. This is what we're all working with. This is just our seed and soil as Americans, as business people, as, people who figured out how to make enterprise a way of life and a language and a value set and a law system. It's very American. It is. And I love it. And, like the rest of you, I also despise parts of it too. But it really is a powerful system that knows how to generate new power and new configurations. And I guess that's part of it too, is that it's not that anyone picks up on any necessarily one thing in the moment. It's that the sum total of the configuration speak to the power of the variable. And so when we say things like, or the power of the sum total is more than any of the given parts, right? So when we say someone has something like an aura, that speaks to their character, that they have a certain direction and power and strength, they're going somewhere, and you can feel that direction, that push and pull, right? This isn't persuasion. This is, oh, you're already moving, so am I with you or not? Oh, these are dividing lines, marketers and salesmen. So are we marketing or are we selling, right? Are we being logical or are we being creative? What are we evaluating and why? These are the kinds of deeper things we're looking at here in terms of elevating standards, both in products, services, people, as the brand and image too. The individuals who need image consulting and who want image consulting, whether that's an artist, whether that's a business person, these kinds of people can benefit. The bigger and larger your design, the more hopeful you are, the more driven you are, the more willing you are to pay for an education, the better image consulting will work for you, because that behavior right there, the best student, my favorite kind of student is to go, before I even say, hey, you should check out this book, they're going, I already checked out the textbook. They didn't even wait for me to tell them to read it, or I tell them to read it and then they're on it like that, right? There's another example of behavior that bodes well, right? Winner behavior. People want to know what's the difference between winners and losers. It's like, well, the chances are the loser doesn't know where they're going or why. Chances are the winner was already up early, or at least early enough with the direction and a purpose, and they knew what they were doing and why. They knew what the most valuable thing they could be doing with their time is, right? Crucial things. And with people around you, like I said, your friends, and they will change. There are people who's going to grow with you, people who are going to fall away, but the people above you are the ones who can help you. They're the ones who can offer you the jobs, who have the resources, who often are all too happy to go. Someone serious about learning, someone serious about an opportunity and education. Some of my best kind of mentors and the men and women who have served me just immensely in life, it was kind of things like that. I generally I approach them. Generally, it's me to them. But at the same time, they were then willing to give. They had a wallet and they shared it. And I'm not talking money. I'm talking things that were way more important. It's the difference between being given a fish and being taught to fish. And I guess this is also American too, right? But that the people above you, they're happy to teach you how to fish. In fact, there's all these books written, and there's all these books continually to be written about how and why people did it. And maybe they're honest, maybe they're not, but that's for the reader to discern, right? We pick up on, based on the values we see, the values represented, and what people really assess, even what they vibe and feel, right? It's not just a logical analysis of things. Sometimes we can just feel something's off when it comes to people and how they present themselves. But regardless, the case study is there for anyone so enterprising. Jim Rohn said that everything you need for a better future has already been written. And he's not wrong. And again, there's more continually to be written. So when you say all this stuff is at everyone's fingertip, even for free, not just libraries and the internet, but it's all there. What does the behavior tell you if someone doesn't bother to capitalize? What does it tell you if all infinite knowledge and information is at their fingertips and they don't bother, or they're too busy watching shorts designed to sap their attention like a manipulative Skinner box? And what all this is about more than anything, and if my image consulting and my work here can teach one thing, it's largely to prevent failure than to gain success, because success is an ongoing, it's, if we're drawing a bow, right, it's understanding that, targets don't sit still. What sits still? Nothing sits still. Time, entropy, I don't know that you could say it's on your side, but if it's a motivating factor, then perhaps it is the fire under one's butt, one's ass, right? So that's what the focus is here. Prevent failure, gain success. You can readjust your goals. Can you fool yourself about getting or not getting what you wanted? Where you really stand with other things and people. Ranked on a scale of 1 to 10, ranked on a value system, ranked on any number of things in any number of ways, in the ways that we as individuals and collectives judge and value each other, because sometimes they line up, right? Individual and collective values. At some point they do align, and these are the arguments we have. So these are the kinds of things that we're constantly discerning, communicating, and arguing about. It's part of the process, and it's actually perfectly healthy. What's unhealthy is not talking about it. What's unhealthy is repressing it and not dealing with it. Oh, you need to take a look in the mirror. Better take a look in the mirror the moment you can stand to do so. Again, I'm Zach Morkowski, image consultant at Sharper Pen Image Consulting, here to help people change, update, revise, create, destroy, recreate, redestroy, project, reflect, embolden, embiggen, render great, render smaller, adjust, repair, people's appearance, behavior, and communication to help them get the outcomes they want, to help them go where they need to go in life, to help them get in where they fit in, whatever their aims are. We are here to help. And again, I'm a big fan of giving. I'm a big fan of being generous. I have a lot more content to come, a lot more considerations. Jim Rohn was also correct, I think, when he said average education will get you average results, right? Just like he said, 40 hours a week will get you average. And I think in 2024, 40 hours a week will hardly get you rent, it seems. So it's kind of dire market in market situations. But again, the universals, what people do to survive, the usage and importance of image, appearance, behavior, and communication, these things have not changed. So average will get you average. It takes above average and above average investment of time to really see the benefit from your seed and soil and to develop these things, right? Whether it's building a business or a family, it does take time. And it's discipline and sustained effort, the kind of behavior that really communicates that one is serious, right? Like I said, the best students, they communicate they're serious with their actions before I ever say or do anything. Best customers too. I meant that in both, from a teacher's perspective and from a marketer's and a businessman's perspective. Again, if you're waiting for anyone else to do these things for you, if you're waiting for someone else to pay you or feed you or figure it out for you, know these things have always been in your hand. Your appearance, your behavior, and communication. The question is, do you use it to your best ability or not? Do you go at half mass? Are you only relying on, half speed, half power? A lot of people do that too, or they use examples they shouldn't. Like I think it's bad that it's bad for everyone else that a lot of the highest ranking people in American society and highest valued society increasingly get lazy in their appearance, behavior, and communication, because then you see that a solitary genius, like, oh, look, he can dress like a bum. Yeah, but everyone else, especially if you're trying to make your way up from the bottom of society, you dress like a bum, you're going to get the result of a bum. And that's what you can see is people judge you for that too and judge each other for that. So, in all the ways that I can help my fellow countrymen and my customers avoid shooting themselves in the foot and to use their abilities with the most leverage with the most minimal effort, right? That's intelligence, literally a lever. One of the most simple and original inventions, something you could learn in a book originally, right? Like the screw, the inclined plane, and the lever. Power is leverage, yes, right? Again, not persuasion, not right now coming from the weaker bargaining position. We're talking about power, which is apparent and valuable, and often when the beautiful becomes visible, that's powerful, or when power becomes visible, that's beautiful. So from here, in terms of seeing value, right, generating, being, seeing, representing value, and then projecting and reflecting and creating that in the world to where it's so apparent that other people work for someone, for instance, right? That's how much value they generate. They're making money that makes other people money, right? That's a very valuable person, and usually it's men in these positions, but increasingly women. But it's a sophisticated game to play. So that's kind of what we're here to help with. And then the question becomes, with these dividing lines, with these standards, not can you afford it, but how do you afford it, right? That's the important question that marketers want their customers to ask, because the answer is already yes. Obviously, we see the value. Of course, someone wants the Prada, someone wants the name brand, someone wants the Cadillac, someone wants the whatever it is they want. Why? The value is apparent. We've already triangulated and agreed upon at least some semblance of what that is, and maybe it holds more weight in some circles than others, but regardless, it holds weight. So back to behavior, appearance, communication, all carrying weight. That's exactly what this is about. So these dividing lines say, you want to afford it, now you're going to learn how to afford it, because no one can fool around to mess around with their reputation and what matters most in life, their family, their friends, their future. You should take these things seriously, and if you value these things, you do. And you are the type of person likely then who seeks standards and applies the standards and adheres to standards, and you'd probably be a good marketer. So this all winds up all being the importance of clear behavior. It's clear communication, which is making clear the value to the point that other people want you, your product, your service, whatever it is you have on offer, whatever it is you're marketing, whatever it is you're selling. Minimal selling, minimal effort, right? Everyone knows trying too hard is not sexy. It's just known. In fact, we even have a term, it's called try hard. It's probably an American term, but who knows? Anyway, this has been Sharper Pen Image Consulting. Again, I'm Zach Markowski. Thanks for tuning in. If you're my audience, I love you. This is for you. If you're not, you can still engage. You can still hang out, like, share, subscribe, comment, hate, be petty. That's fine too. It also says and communicates a lot, sets a standard, and everyone who does anything knows that when you exist or something exists in the world, it's just attacked. So you can kind of either just sidestep it or defend it where necessary. But now I digress. The point is, I was trying to say, if you're my audience, I love you. And if you're a non-believer, who cares? Shun the non-believers. So remember, audience, remember everyone else, shun the non-believers. Don't put up with low standards. And if no one else is embodying what you want to see, then you better learn to take care and do it yourself. So thanks for listening. Have a great day. Bye. And there's the thing about people and value. I said, yes, marketing, sales, all these things, image consulting, art, it's all about laws and dividing lines, right? Behaviors, appearances, communications, people do and don't want. Things that are either okay, enjoyable, preferable, illegal, right? We go on down the list. So with these dividing lines, it really is matters of, it is okay to say, shun the non-believers. Hey, you like Pepsi, you like Coke. Hey, you like these books, you don't. Hey, I do, you don't, they might, right? It's too much to sort through. No one's concerned, no marketer or consumer is concerned necessarily with what everyone else is doing, except when that's the bandwagon or the selling perspective or the hook, you could say, right? Be a part of some attractive group, which has long been a part of American marketing and sales. But it's also, that has to do with our identity and the way we see ourselves. And this is why I say self-image is everything, just like image is everything.
Shun the non-believer. Shun.